Seems legit.
Hello Legitimates, welcome back to my channel. Today I have used this amazing quokka panel that is from Inklings in the Kraken, and I have made the Ethel tote by Swoon. Now the only hardware you need for this entire bag is a single zipper and zipper pull for the inside there. So this is the panel I chose to use for this, and then I've gone with the pale green vinyl because I think it's pretty. And then this is the coordinating fabric for the panels for this round. I think it's adorable. It's got a little slip pocket here, which is why it's not perfectly matched up. You don't always have to match them, and this is proof today. But I think that looks amazing. I've still kind of tried to get as many of the other animals on as possible, but if you wanted to, you could also center the quokka onto the slip pocket. Whatever floats your boat. The handles go into the top, so there's no need for that hardware. It's literally just my little quokka zipper pull and some rainbow zipper tape. So let's get started. Alrighty, let's get started. So I have interfaced so this is canvas, because canvas is my favorite. Then I have interfaced it with Hefty, and I've put foam on the back as well. The foam does go all the way to the seam, but if you're on a domestic and you're worried, you can cut that down. The base piece, we're actually going to start with the base piece. So I've done vinyl for the gusset. You don't have to, I just wanted to. And this piece has the stabilizer within the seam allowance, but these pieces have the foam all the way to the edge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the base piece and the side piece, line up that seam allowance, and stitch. We're going to stitch forward, we're going to back stitch. Now this whole bag, you can add more hardware places, but it actually just has one zip because I'm doing a Tory pocket. Alright, so now we're going to open this out, and I'm going to top stitch it because it'll be pretty and it'll help the seam sit flatter. If you are concerned, you can separate the foam like this and then grab some little scissors and cut the foam out. This will make the seam sit flatter while you sew it. You don't have to do it, but if you're struggling to make it stay where you want, it is an option. So I'm going to spread the seam out and I'm going to top stitch on each side. Now I'm mainly doing this because this will be a cute little feature, as well as keeping the seam flat, which will make it easier to sew later. You don't have to do it, or you can push them all to just the lining base side if you wanted to. I'm not in a hurry for this. It is quite easy to move off the area we're meant to be. The rainbow does really look good on this though. The pale color is going to show it up more. I should actually look in to see if I can get a pastel rainbow. I guarantee someone does it. If anybody knows, please drop the link in my comment section. I would love to know where to get some pastel rainbow. Alright, so now we're going to do the other side. We're going to go back to a 2.5 stitch length, which for me is my standard. Now different people have different standard stitch lengths. That's totally fine. I just let you know what I do. You don't have to follow my rules. I don't mind what you do. Now, because I cut the foam out on the other side, I'm going to do it to this side too. But if I had left it in, you just want to basically make sure it's even. Hack it out. It doesn't have to be super neat. Nobody's judging or looking at it. Alright, I'm going to open it. And because it's vinyl, I've got this little roller that I got from Temu. So you can actually just roll the seam to help give it a sense of staying where it's told. But you don't have to do that. It is just an option. And then I'm going to hold it open and I'm going to fold this and this so it's not crashing into everything around me. And then I'm just going to top stitch. Probably should have back stitched, but I promise it's not the end of the world if you don't. also am about to knock my clips, so let's not play that game. Alright. Beautiful. Now you don't have to do those stitches, but I promise it will help keep it flatter at those seams when it comes time to joining everything. So I'm going to pop that aside, and we started there because they were on top. The front panel technically is meant to have a slip pocket, but we are instead going to put it on the coordinating back panel because I don't want to hide the pretty quokka. For those that don't know, that is an Australian animal. Oh, okay. So here's the lining version of our gusset. So since I can see those pieces, let's sew them, and then we'll do the slip pocket. Patterns are more of a suggestion than a rule. Not everything has to be done in the same order that it is presented to you. Please don't forget that. It's not the boss of you. It is merely a guide. I don't even follow my own patterns sometimes. I write them in a way that makes chronological sense, and then I just do it however I feel like. Where is it? There it is. Here's the other piece. So along the other flat edge. And I cut all these so that they're facing up because these are flowers. This piece here is directional, so we'll worry about that when we put it in the bag. I could have picked something non-directional, but then you won't learn anything. Alright, now, if you want to, you don't have to do this, but if you want to, you can cut down the seam allowance. It doesn't have to be that big for lining, so you can just trim it down a bit. Again, it's less bulk for those on a domestic machine. I did make this bag on a domestic machine. This is the first bag I ever carried, this Ethel pattern. It was a free pattern from Swoon. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time. And I thought I'd try my hand at bag making. So this was the first bag that I ever carried. Which is a good starting point when you think about that. Alright, this is the slip pocket. So I'm going to put them right sides together. And then I'm going to personally stitch it at 3/8 of an inch. I think you are meant to do 1/2 inch. I'm pretty sure that's what the pattern says. But I actually find this a bit easier on curves. You can pick whatever seam allowance you like. It will just change the overall height of the pocket by like that minuscule amount. So do with that information what you will. I'm going to trim this because it's a curve. If you don't have zigzag scissors, or pinking shears as they are professionally known, you can just make little clips into the fabric. So you'd take these and you'd clip this way all the way along. 'Tis time consuming, but the curves look better, so it is worth it. But zigzag scissors, I bought them at Spotlight when they were on sale. I'll just wait till things are on sale. Everything goes on sale eventually, is my theory on that. So I got them for 40% off. I'm sure if I had looked on the internet, you could find different ones. I personally like the Fiskars ones. I've tried other brands. If you go back to my older videos, you will see other brands, but they're just not as good. I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length, and then I'm just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from this top edge. This will help it to sit nicely. And I'm just rolling it in my fingers so it sits where it's told. Like that. And back stitch. Because back stitching is everything. And the rainbow thread suits perfectly. So now we're just going to, and you could make one of these for your insides if you wanted to. You could have a slip pocket on the inside. I'm just going to do an outside one. So we're going to line it up like this. So the idea is you can chuck your phone in it for easy access. Or, you know, put a book in if you're going somewhere that you want to take a book. Or a Kindle. I assume a Kindle would fit. I don't really know how big they are, but I assume about that big. And if you had them vertical, sticking up a little bit, you could fit your Kindle in there for easy access. So I've just clipped it on. You don't have to clip it if you just want to hold it. That is what I normally do. You don't have to clip it, but for beginners, let's use our clips. So I'm going to start here. You don't have to backstitch. And I'm just going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now, what I'm doing with my hands is I'm pushing the foam down as we get to sew there. If you don't put pressure on it, I'll show you what'll happen. You're gonna get, right here, you're gonna get pinches. I don't know if you can see, but it's kind of pushing all the fabric this way. So by pushing down, you're kind of also holding everything in place. Now, I always put my clips right side up so I can pull them off as I'm sewing. This is a thing that does take practice, so please don't be alarmed if you can't do it straight off. Took me a long time to learn to do that. If you're new to bag making, get to a clip, stop, pull it off. Don't try and like rush into things. Slip pocket. If you wanted to, you could put a press stud or a rivet magnet. You could put a magnet in, but you'd have to undo all the bottom. Whatever. I like it just as a slip pocket. Again, this has got one zipper in the whole bag. So that's that piece done. So now I've got our front and our back and our gusset. So I'm going to go and find the center because I'm all about the center of everything. So here's the center. Now this one's not directional because it's a plain vinyl. But if you've done a printed vinyl, you want to think about how you're attaching that. Alright, then I'm going to fold this. Now, when folding something covered in foam, you always want to fold the foam together to find the center. It's easier to fold. I don't understand why. It just is. Okay. We're also going to find the center of this one. Like so. And again, I might get stronger scissors to clip this. You just want to I just cut a little bit. It's just enough so you can see. And that's still very minor, but I can see where the center is. Now pick a side, any side, and we're going to line up the center with the center. Now I'm going to make my clips face the gusset piece. Again, because I want to be able to pull them off as I move along. And I'm going to put a bunch of clips all the way to the edge of the straight part. Once we get to a curve, we're ignoring that bit. We'll come back to it. So I'm going to clip to there. Then I'll turn around so you can see. Done just the bottom. Now I'm going to take this top corner and this top corner and line them up. They should line up perfectly. This is the way the pattern was designed. And this is also, we always move towards the corner and the curve because different patterns have different amount of what they call ease to push the curves in. Some of them are really tight, some of them are a lot looser. It just depends on the pattern maker as to how tight or loose they are. So that's why we always do the curves last. I can probably get one more straight clip there. So see, from this side it looks like it's not going to fit. We're going to now use our thumbs and I'm going to push it in to be a 3D object. So I'm just pushing all of this fabric in until the two raw edges line up. Now you're going to get a little bit of what looks like bumps right at the edge. That is totally normal. What we don't want is bumps this side of your clips. So the bumps are going to be right at the edge, but these clips are 1/2 inch, so that's the seam allowance. So long as there's no bumps, and if you have a look on this side, see how there's no, I mean it looks wonky, but it's not. See how there's no pinching or anything in there? That's what we're looking for. So I'm going to line up this edge, and I always have my clips facing the gusset piece because I sew gusset side up. If you do it the other way, just make sure your clips are on the other way. I have tried sewing it the other way. I like this way better. It might be a personal preference or it just might work better this way. I'm not really sure. One side always goes in easier, which makes no sense because we find the center, and yet here we are. So It's in. It's looking good. Making sure that there's not going to be any pinches. Then I'm going to go back to my joining stitch length of 2.5. We've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to start here. I'm going to stitch and I'm going to back stitch. Now I'm just going to go slowly. There's no hurry. It is not a marathon. No, it is not a sprint. It's a marathon. And people with bad shoulders and knees and necks, you might not get this far each day on a bag. And don't worry about that. It used to take me 3 days to complete a bag when I first started. One day I'd cut the pattern out and then stick it all together and then cut the pieces. And then the next day I would iron everything and then cut out all the interfacing. I no longer cut interfacing. I iron the pieces directly on and then cut around them at the end. But when I first started, it said to cut out the interfacing. So I used to spend all this time perfectly cutting out the interfacing shapes. Waste of time, but at the time, I didn't know that. You can go and look through my older videos and you can see how I put interfacing on if anyone's interested. I do cut the foam individually though. Just not the other interfacing. Okay, so now we're going to turn this out. And we're going to check on our corners. We want to make sure that nothing is pinching. And you'll know if it is, you'll see a big crease. When we don't though, we're good. Looks awesome. I'm really happy I picked the pale green. I know it doesn't look like it matches here as much, but on the main panel, it's perfect. So, main panel. You can do front first or back first. This doesn't matter. It is irrelevant. Measure the center. Grab some clips. Right, straight edge first. Always do the straight edge first. Then we're going to come up, we're going to line up those edges, and we're going to go down towards the curve. Now, if you want to, if you're worried, you can actually put the clips this close together, right? There's no rule about how far apart you want them to be. It's what you feel comfortable with. So in different circumstances, you're going to like a different amount of gap. Totally fine. You do you. I do about an inch gap, but I don't actually measure it. I just eyeball it. I know what's going to be comfortable for me. And you might also find that you want a lot more clips in a corner. Alright, around we go. Done. It's a pretty big bag, really. Backstitch. So there's no closure in the top of this bag. And if there is, I didn't cut it out. I'm pretty sure it's just an open. So it is like a tote, but it gets smaller at the top. So it's less likely to drop things as opposed to just a normal square one. Oh, I just ran out of bobbin thread. Did you hear that? Because I did. The more you sew, the more in tune with your bag you will become. Or your sewing machine, sorry. You hear it when it stops sewing. It's like an absence of a specific noise. But I did do a spare bobbin. So I'm just going to go back a few stitches. I'm going to slowly back stitch and hope that my machine doesn't have a meltdown today. It doesn't love back stitching with a full bobbin. So I've started just not making them totally full, which does mean I go through them quicker, but also stops the whole knots and dramaticness. It could just be me and my sewing that makes dodgy bobbins. I don't know. Couldn't tell ya. So again, I'm still using my fingers to push down all of the foam because it's thick and bulky and I don't want anything pinching. Alright, happy days. Bag. I know you can't really see what's going on. And I need to take those tails off. And those ones. Alright. Where are my other scissors? I have lots of different scissors for lots of different things. One day, not this week, but one day I will go through my cart and explain all my most used stuff and my least used stuff, but still is important. I'm just going to cut off most, but not all, of this excess that's lying around here. What this will do, and this is something I didn't know when I started, but if you cut the excess off, when we put our lining in, it won't sag everywhere because it's not trying to compete to get into these corners against all this extra fabric. The downside to doing this is my hands already kind of hurt because I'm cutting through 2 layers of foam and vinyl and fabric and interfacing. And it's just, it's thick. It's a lot of thickness. And while it's not hard to do a single cut like that, it gets a bit much going all the way around. But it is a necessary evil, so again, you might get to this point and then stop for the day because your hands can't handle anymore. Don't feel bad. I only do it because I absolutely have to. If I wasn't recording, I would have cut one side and then gone and done something else and come back to it. I'm only doing it because I'm on a video. All in one hit. Oh. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. Other options for this bag too is you could have put in bag feet. Just requires more hardware. So, for the insides, we've done our gusset piece already. So one side's totally fine. And then one side I'm going to put a zipper pocket. And I've decided to use the animals because I thought that would be really, really cute. Oh, actually before we go too deep into our bobbin, let's stitch our handles. So these are going to go into the top of the bag, so you won't need strap connectors, all the hardware, and we also don't need to worry about the raw edges. So I folded both sides into the middle and then in half again. And we're just going to top stitch down each side. So I'm going to do it at a 4. Another reason why I picked rainbow, it's going to look amazing on this. Then we're going to go to the other side. You always do the open side first. And then we're going to grab the other one and chain stitch it because I love chain stitching. If you're new here and you don't know that, I love chain stitching. So I'm just going to do a few stitches and then cut this off so it's not a dragging weight. You can also see it's twisting. Best way to do that, twist it in the opposite direction and pull as hard as you can. And it gets rid of the little twist. It's like a magic trick. One side, flip, jump to the other side. Now these are just very basic handles. I also didn't put any interfacing in them because they are canvas. So they're already relatively thick. So that's 4 layers of canvas. So it's a decent enough handle. If you wanted to, now this is not something you have to do, but if you wanted to, you could actually take, and I'm not going to do it to them, but you could take some tubing and actually thread it into the handle to make it more substantial. Right? I don't know if you can see that. That is a very cool idea. It does make it a bit, like it makes it lovely and stiff, but we're not doing that today. It's just a random thought that you all should know that I've had. So we're going to take one lining piece and our zipper pocket. Now this is a Tory pocket. For those that don't know what a Tory pocket is, it is a pocket size that I use in 90% of all my patterns because it's just a good size pocket. And it is 8 inches by 12 inches. It's in a lot of my bags. Or I do one that's like half this size. So 8x6. Just a thing that I do. So I found the center. Oops, I found the wrong center. So, little just random while we're discussing things. This bit here is what you'll see, and this bit's going to be upside down. So you want the side we're going to put the zipper in not facing where we're going to see. So this is what we're going to see. So if you wanted to center your pocket, you fold it in half, and then from here is what you will see. So we're going to see some pandas, a fennec fox, and a flying squirrel. Not squirrel, sugar glider. We're Australian. It's a sugar glider. Well, I assume it's a sugar glider. They're not all Aussie. I could be wrong. Anyway, the point is, if you've got a bigger print, you would center it so the design is right in there. I already found the center of that. Perfect. So, it's essentially going to look like we're putting it on upside down, which I guess we are. And I'm just going to line up those two center points. If you need to grab a ruler because you're a beginner, that is okay. So you line up one of the lines with the base, and then you put the peak of the point at here, and then we line up the next one. And that's how you do it with a ruler. I eyeball it fairly well, but that took practice. And like hundreds of these. I've made hundreds of this pocket. And that's not an exaggeration. I've got about 400 videos on YouTube. They're not all sewing, but some have more than one of these pockets, plus all the things that I've made that I haven't recorded. It's just a practice thing. So we're going to stitch and back stitch, and we're only sewing the two long lines. We're not sewing the backwards line, like the little short lines, because I used to. If you go back to really old videos, I did used to sew it. But what I found since stopping is you don't get as much puckering in the corners from when we're trying to turn it through. Scissors, any scissors will do. I'm using the vinyl cutting ones because they're super sharp. Oh, not zigzag scissors. So I'm going to kind of try and do a line roughly in the middle, and then I'm just going to cut that open, and when I get 3/4 to an inch from the end, I'm just going to make a little triangle. We're going to do that on both ends. 1 and 2. Now I'm going to iron this because it's canvas and it won't sit properly either otherwise. But we're going to push it through. And then if you wiggle the fabric in the corners, it will actually stop puckering. You've just got to kind of wiggle it back and forth. We're doing this motion, if you can't tell from the moving stuff. So basically we're doing this in the corners to help it sit flat. It will also help once I've ironed it. So I'm going to go do that. Right. Ironed beautiful and flat on both sides. And again, it's going to look upside down because when this folds over, and you look in there, see how now they're all the right way up. Now, if you wanted to, you could actually just have this as a slip pocket like that. But we're obviously not doing that. We need at least one zipper because I special ordered Quokka zipper pulls specifically for this panel. So we're putting in a zipper if it's the last thing I do. I went with, because this is a really fun floral, I went with bright yellow to match whatever flowers those are. I don't know. I know that one's a fuchsia, and beyond that, I have no idea. Flowers were never my strong suit. We can't all be good at everything. Now, I have special zipper scissors. They're not really special. They're just older, normal scissors. All the scissors in my house go through downgrades over time. So they get sharpened and sharpened, and then eventually it's not working out so great. Or somebody gifts me a pair of scissors. My husband does that to me because he's adorable. And so they get downgraded. So these used to be my first ever like vinyl fancy high-end scissors. And over the time, if you cut too much with these, they give me blisters. So they have eventually just been downgraded to zipper scissors and paper cutting scissors because cutting thin stuff doesn't hurt. But cutting fabric and vinyl, if I was doing that all day, I would get blisters. And I used to at Spotlight. It was horrible. How freaking cute. You also want to make sure you put the zipper on evenly. Just something to think about. So I'm going to take this open, flat, and just lay it over the top of the zipper. Now I'm going to come in front of the zipper pull. So whichever way you're closing it, come in front of the way that it's closing. And we're going to stitch this side of it. I didn't back stitch. That was not a mistake. Because we're going to go all the way around, we don't want too much bulk in the back stitching department. It draws the eye, especially if you're doing a contrasting thread. Mine's rainbow, it'll all mix in. But if you've done a contrasting thread, like white thread on black, you're gonna see if there's like a chunk of back stitching. So we want to eliminate as much of that as possible. So I didn't back stitch. Long story short, I've come basically in line of where I started. So I'm gonna lift up the presser foot and then zip it close. So now the zipper can't distort any more stitches as I go the rest of the way around the zipper. I just hold it in place with my fingers, but I do on my website have zipper thickness double-sided tape, which is 1/8 of an inch, to get it done. So I'm stitching along. I am now in that first hole, so I'm going to go 2 more stitches and then back stitch. And that's now locked in the first and last lot of stitching. And then trim off that tail, because there's always one. If you want to get super fancy, you can grab a thread zapper. I have 2 because they were both gifted to me, actually. This one is rechargeable by USB, as opposed to the other one that has batteries. They're both cool. The other one's more powerful, but the batteries die quicker. But yeah, you can just recharge it, which is pretty cool. And then this one is more comfortable. I like this one. And then the end heats up and goes bright red, and it takes a battery. Ah, now, if we hold it up the right way, the pocket should fall perfectly in line with itself. It's how I designed it. So, keeping that in mind, we line up the bottom, and I'm going to stitch the sides. We're not going to stitch the bottom of the pocket because I want to turn the bag through here so it's the prettiest it can be. And if you forget, just unpick it. Trust me on this. Worth it. And then we're going to do the other side. So I'm just going to fold this back. Again, line up the raw edges at the bottom and then stitch. Now you can stitch this anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch. I personally like to do about 3/8 because it's a comfortable amount away from the raw edge and when we get closer to the zipper. But you can do whatever. You don't want to get too close to the end because if people are rough, they'll shred it. And you don't want to go too far in because then it'll be awkward up here and you'll lose more pocket space. So that's what I found the most comfortable. I'm also going to open it, but not so far. If you've got a longer zipper pull, you don't want it to be able to catch in the seam at the side. So if that's the case, half zip it. That is the solution to that problem. All right. Lining construction. So again, we're going to find the center. We are going to do this a little differently though. There's rules that I follow for all of my bags with the exception of when I'm sidetracked. But generally speaking, all of my bags I do the same way. Zipper pocket is always on the back wall. So if the bag's sitting in front of you and you're looking into it, you're looking at the zipper pocket. That's what I like. Because of that, that means that here needs to be the top of the fabric. So the fuchsias hang down. So that means that it has to go this way. So when we look in the bag, the pattern flows and the lining bit won't be upside down. It's not a huge deal, but if you're up to the sewing part of your venture where you are more into the details, this is one of them. So back wall up the right way, and then we're just going to put them right sides together. And we can add a clip in the middle to hold it in place. But what we're actually going to do is leave this bottom open to turn the bag through here. And you might be like, but we just left the zipper pocket open. I know, but that is a bigger and easier space than the zipper pocket to push everything through. And this bag has a lot of foam and we've got vinyl and I don't want to struggle. So if you always struggle birthing bags, this is the way around that. If you didn't put a zipper pocket in your bag, you would leave this side open or the bottom, and then you will top stitch it or invisible hand stitch it closed. So, on a curve, and you will find that the lining versus the exterior behaves a bit differently. I don't know if you can see this, but it is definitely behaving a bit differently because it's not as thick. It just does its own thing. So again, this end together, line up the top. We're going to work our way down to the curve. The curve's always the last bit. Always. It's like a rule. I didn't write it. Promise. Because, you know what? I'll show you on the other side what would happen if I don't do it this way. I will show you, but not now because I've nearly finished clipping. So we are going to stitch here to that clip and then stop. And then we're going to start again on the other side and then stop. I also think it's nearly time for a new needle for me. Sounds like it's stabbing more than it should have to. Alright, put the clips away, trim off that tail just while I'm here. Then we'll come and start at this clip, leaving the gap. Now, the reason we do it first is because if you forget, right, and you go into like autopilot and you're like, oh crap, I didn't leave the gap, you can do it on the next one because you've thought about it. And that way we don't have to unpick. So I always like to leave the gap first, like on the first side we attach, for that exact reason. So, other side. Let me show you what would happen. Let's find the center. I'll show you what will happen if you just clip things willy-nilly. Let's go from the center to the top. That's always a fun one. Or if you went from, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can clip things, but let's just go this way. I will show you what will happen. And I'm going to deliberately make it look bad a little bit, just to prove my point though. Right? So we're going around the corner. We're making sure everything's matching up. I swear if this works anyway, I'm going to be shattered. I'm trying to make a point to make it not work. Because sometimes I can do it this way, I just shouldn't. Okay, no, it worked. We're fine. So, if we did it that way, top edge doesn't match up. It's a different size. I mean, it's not, but it looks like it is because we didn't line up the edges. And that little excess that's there should be in the curve, and it's not because that's not the way we built it. When I first started, that curve was a lot worse than I just made it look like it was about that much out. So there is reasons why I tell you to do stuff, and apparently today of all days is the day I want to explain them. I have a giant workload this week and next week, which is great, but also slightly stressful because I did no work last week. It's my own fault. It's fine. So, straight bit. Now this time we're going to sew all the way around. We only need one gap to turn the bag through, not two. And so then we're just going to hold this like a 3D object. And again, it usually works better on the foam side, weirdly enough. The lining is almost too flimsy and doesn't like to be told what to do, except I'm the boss of it and it will do what it's told. But it just gets a little bit more sloppy, messy, tricky. I don't know what the right word is here. So we're going to start and we're going to back stitch. Now, if you don't have a lot of this rainbow thread, all of this doesn't need to be done in rainbow. If you, like, I've only got one roll, I will just buy another one, but it will be more difficult to get. So if you've got, and also rainbow threads are more expensive. I assume it's because they take way longer to create or whatever. So if you wanted to savor your rainbow thread, all of this construction part, you would do in like a normal color, like a cheaper color, and then you would just do all the top stitching. Now the downside of this plan is you're going to have to switch back and forth on thread a lot. Like you'll be like this color, that color. But you could do it all. You could sew in a way where you do all the top stitching together. So you'd do handles first. No. You would do attach the pocket and then not top stitch it. And then you would do the slip pocket and then not top stitch it. And then you would change over and you would stitch the pocket on, sew your handles, top stitch the slip pocket, and then you could switch back again. Just a thought for anyone that wants to conserve their more expensive stuff. I used to do it when I first started because some things are way more expensive than others. You could also sew your lining in just a normal thread. Doesn't need to be this particular bag strength thread because it's the outside that's going to hold the bag together. The lining is a lot more flimsy with less interfacing, so you kind of would want the thicker thread on the thicker stuff. Now again, I'm cutting off this excess because it's going to help our bag sit in itself nicely. If you have tried this and it's still not working for you, increase the seam allowance on your lining or slightly decrease the seam allowance on the exterior, or you could do a smidgeny bit of both. Because if the outside is just a little bit larger than the inside, it should sit a lot more snugly. But you only do that if you're struggling with this plan, where we sew it normally and then trim it down. If this doesn't work for you, on let's say your first 3 bags, slightly, and I mean slightly, like 1/8 of an inch, change your seam allowance on the inside or the outside or both. So I'm just taking off most of this excess. It will also make the bag lighter. Nobody wants a heavy, empty bag. And while you may not think that this weighs much, one day we're going to weigh all the stuff. And you're going to be surprised. Look, it's probably only 50 grams. I don't know what that is in ounces. But it's enough. So, that is now our inside, and we've got this big hole right here. Now, we're going to think about how we're putting it in. Here, on this side, is my quokka. So, the other wall's the back. So we want the zipper touching the back wall. So shove the whole thing in. And then I'm going to make sure that the zipper is on the back wall. And then I'm going to come to this corner and I'm going to clip it in place. Now my clips are going to face the lining because I'm on this machine. If I was on my cylinder arm, which I do plan on doing in the very near future, now that it's back up and operational, you would actually put the clips on the other way and you would sew it this side up because you can slot it on your machine. If you're on a domestic, you might want to think about doing it that way too. Now, right now, kind of looks like, oh, it doesn't anymore. It kind of looks like it won't fit, but once you line it up and actually put that edge straight, it lines up fine. So don't be fooled. Sometimes things just like to look like they're a bit tricky. It'll be fine. All right, corners, we want the corners to match up. That's what you'll notice. Again, if you're starting to nitpick your sewing and improve the like finer details, this corner matching up will look better. It will also ensure that your lining's going to sit where it's told, right? But so if I see how it's like a bit hangy, if I actually pull on that, it lines itself back up. It's just because the exterior is thicker than the lining and it's got more stability. Now before we go any further, because I will forget, we're going to insert our handles. I'm so used to not doing it that way. So what I'm going to do, actually I need to take out these middle bits, but that's okay too. So I'm going to just smooth it out, hold it together and shove it in, like so. I'm going to have it sitting out so I won't lose them. And then we're going to grab a ruler and do whatever the pattern says as far as handles are concerned. I'm guessing, but I'm pretty good at guessing because I've done this enough and I'm pretty sure I'm right. There is a slim chance I'm wrong, but it's also a fair amount apart. Oh, actually, maybe we'll go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. I'm going to do, I'll tell you what I'm doing because I don't know if it's in the pattern or not. I'm going to do 1.5 inches from the edge seam. Edge seam, not edge of actual bag, because we've randomly cut off a random amount of fabric. So we're doing it from the stitch line, not the actual edge, because I did not cut that evenly in any way, shape or form. I'm not even going to pretend I did. So again, we want to take out the middle ones, smooth it, hold it together so that there's no twists, shove it in. Doesn't matter how it shoves in, so long as you're holding onto it and it didn't twist at the time, you are good to go. I'm going to put one on with a single clip and then again with my little ruler. I love this little ruler, so handy. I've seen some people can get like 1x6 inch rulers, also cute. Mine is 1.25 because it's the width of the zipper tape. So it's perfect to make gussety pieces. Handles are now in. If I had forgotten, I was going to have to unpick, so I'm pretty happy that I remembered. Now, because we're going the whole way around, you can start and stop from anywhere. I usually just pull this back and start wherever slots in. This top is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You do want to do that because it will open up that top enough. Because the bag kind of angles in, you're going to want it to open up the proper amount. Otherwise, you're going to have a small bag opening, which is harder to shove things in. It really is. You always also want to stop with your needle down before you rearrange the bag. Needle down, arrange the bag. You also want to make sure, just while we're on the subject of things, you also want to make sure that you're not accidentally stitching the fabric on the other side. It has been known to happen. I have accidentally done it. This edge here will fold under and get stitched. So you really want to make sure you're just holding that bit out of the way. Stopping with the needle down so that nothing shifts when you manhandle the bag. Needle down. Last little bit. And then for added measure, what we are now going to do, and I do this on all my bags pretty much, any bag that has a handle like this, you want to come and reinforce where the handles are. So it's not just a single line of stitching holding that handle in place. If you're gifting this bag or you're selling this bag, you never know how much weight someone's going to put in the bag. You can never know that. I never know that with my own bags. I went shopping the other day and put everything I had in my Empress tote. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of it was heavy and I have damaged my handles because I definitely overdid it. It was too full and too heavy and I have damaged it. And I plan on fixing it. Might turn it into a video on how to fix it. Who knows? Right, next one. So I'm just going forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. And I'm not going over the same line perfectly. So if you want to get a closer look at that, I'm zigzagging back and forth, but not on itself. That will give us more holding because the stitches are going over more fabric so that the tension on them for a full bag is spread out over more than just 5 stitches or whatever. I know it's more than 5, but you get my point. So, with the lining pulled out, so your bag looks like this, we're going to put our hand into the bottom. And if you did forget to leave a space, you can go through the zipper pocket. It's just going to be trickier because of all the foam. And the first thing I like to do is always pull the handles out, or if you've got a bag with a flap, pull that out first. Always, it's just easier. Pick a corner, any corner, push it in, and you want to be able to grab it enough that it kind of turns into a hand pocket. If you've only got like a little bit, it's not enough to kind of rip it through. So you want to push a decent amount, be able to hand pocket it, and then we're trying to basically fold the bag in on itself to pull it through. And I don't know if you can tell, but this arm is actually squishing the bag. Like, it's going to have some wrinkles. Totally normal. That's why we iron our bags at the end. I don't usually do it on camera though, because nobody wants to stand and watch me iron. Right, so the idea is if you can get your bag inside itself like this, I know it looks like a nightmare, but this is a really good sign. Then we just keep pulling at the vinyl. You just pull slowly in opposite directions and it will fall out essentially. Like it's not a struggle, I'm not struggling. And then we can come inside the hole and push the corners out. Like that. Ta-da! Look at that. Fantastic. So this is now what we should have. We're not going to put the lining in yet, because what we're going to do is we're going to open it up, and then we're going to put a hand into the zipper pocket and grab our hole and pull the hole so it's inside out through the zipper pocket. So now we're not dealing with all of this. We did that the easy way. Trust me when I say it's the easy way. So now I'm just going to stitch and back stitch over some of the previous stitches so that I won't accidentally leave a big gap. We don't want that. And then stitch it shut with the same seam allowance. Get back to the first lot of stitches on the other side, run over like 3 or 4 of them, and then back stitch. One more step. Again, just one of those finicky little things. Zigzag scissors. Cut off the excess fabric there. You didn't cut it off before because you needed to know where your seam was. Now that that's done, we can just cut off this excess, throw it in the bin, push the lining back through the zipper pocket. Now, this is how I always do it. I put my pointer fingers into my first knuckle, bend over, pinch with my thumb and my middle finger underneath, and then push that much down. And that's how I turn in that edge. But really all I'm doing is pushing the raw edges inside to do a top stitch. It's just how my fingers do it, if anybody was interested. It becomes habit after a while. You'll find it quite easy if you start doing it that way now. In a month, you won't even realize you're doing it. It's just an automatic thing, which is probably why I've never deeply explained it before now. So now I'm going to put my pocket in, zip up my quokka zipper. Now, it's not looking very fantastic right now because our edge is hanging out where we don't want it. So what I want to do, you want to pull down your lining. Now again, if you've got a cylinder arm, or you can like lift it up, we're going to put our clips facing the outside. But I can't do that. And I'm not turning the bag inside out again. You could do that, I just don't want to. Had enough of that. So I'm just going to tuck under. And I'm just tucking this under, and I'm also going to go in and pull it down so that it's not going to pinch under where I'm trying to stitch. If I have convinced you to buy these bad boys, these are leather tool pliers. You just want to squish where the seams join. That's going to make them a bit flatter and much more domestic machine friendly. I don't have to do it for this machine or this particular bag, But I do need to do it on super thick ones, even for this machine, because it's not really meant to do what I make it do. It's not what it was designed for at all. But it's been going many years strong now, and it's not blown up on me, so that's a good sign. If it had feelings, I would assume it enjoys its new life. Just because I did it on the other side, I'm going to do it here out of habit and symmetry and all that jazz. I guess I can't help myself. You can't just half do things. You either do them or you don't. Better. The lining's still not sitting perfectly flat. That's fine. I will iron it down later. So what we want to do is we want to make sure the handle is actually this side. We also want to go up to a 4 stitch length because it's fancy top stitching. Now would be the time to switch over to your fancy colour if you took my advice. And I'm just going to start wherever because I can. I also want to make sure there's a really long tail for this. And I'll show you why in a minute. I'm going to start here because it's the easy part to start at. And off we go. Now you want to make sure that your handles are pointed up and away from the bag so that you don't accidentally stitch them down. It is a thing. I have done it before. It is not ideal. You have to unpick. We all know how I feel about that. Needle down, drag the bag around. Again, make sure the handles are out. Now, while we're here, I'm going to grab this tail, pull on it, and it's going to create a loop. I'm now going to tie these off in a knot, like a really small one, and then melt and singe the ends with my fancy burny thing. If you don't have a fancy burny thing, that is okay. Use a lighter, but don't do it yet. You won't be able to get the flame close enough. So if you were going to use a lighter, you wait till the bag's not under the machine, and then you'd melt the little ends. You can also use a soldering iron. If you randomly own one of them, for who knows what reason, you can use a soldering iron to melt the edge of the thread as well. I actually used to have a soldering iron because the waterproof canvas that is at Spotlight frays a lot. So if you actually get a piece of glass, lean your fabric on the glass and then put the knife edge on a soldering iron, it will cut the fabric and stop all the fraying nonsense. It just takes a really long time. It's not quick like scissors. It's way more slow moving. But you then don't have to deal. I'm going to backstitch those last two. Because you can't even see it. Look at that. Ha 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 ha. And then I'm just going to push the lining. So I put my hands all the way to the edge and then I'm doing this. This is what my hands are doing to make sure that the lining is pushed all the way in and it's sitting wonderfully. And there is my bag with one zipper as hardware. We've got our slip pocket. If you wanted to, you could fussy cut these so it looked like a continuous invisible slip pocket. Very real option. And then you got your zipper pocket in there. I like to have it a few inches from the top. That's just me. But you could put it higher if you need to be able to access it easier. Now see this, how it's rolling in? We are going to need to grab it, roll it in your fingers to the edge, and then violently shake it to create a dent, basically, in your vinyl. We're creating a crease in the vinyl so that the bag will sit nicer. And be rough. If you can break it doing this, I would not trust it with my wallet and personal effects. Just saying. See how that already sits better? Compared to this side. See how that side's curving in? This side's now sitting flat. You just need to go around and manhandle the bag and it will be all good. I'm going to do a little bit more. Just so that at least the front sits nice. Ta-da! See how it's not curving in anymore? It's got like crisper edges. We've got nice long handles that match the back. And I think that the green matches the front panel amazingly. The back's just fun. So there you go, guys. One Ethel by Swoon. I will see you all next time. Bye!